Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who lieth betwixt and beyond. This is Final Fantasy Run Randomizer here on Speed Gaming Prime. I am your commentator, Woat. Joining me tonight on the tracker is Captain Nerd 2. We have a race between Caront and KennyStarr76. And this promises to be a mirror match. This is not a draft, folks. This is just they both decided to go Fighter, Thief, Red Mage, and Black Mage. A party that's very heavy on the offense, but still has enough defense to where, if the spells land right, we're in good shape. So, we're going to go ahead and get this party rolling, because, quite frankly, I don't want to make these guys wait. So I'm just going to go ahead and lift the gate. So we can get this show on the road. So this is week 5 of our 2020 Spring Tournament. These are the fire incentive flags. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or maybe haven't joined us in a while, what that means is one of the chests that they're looking for tonight is a box at the bottom of the volcano dungeon. And it will contain an item that is either important to progression or just nice to have. There's a lot of boxes like that. We call them incentive chests. It's sort of our equivalent of having major item locations or something like that. Except we kind of just decide which ones to turn on and off, dependent on what people like to do. So, in this case, our incentive locations include the Ice Cave, the Titan's Tunnel, the volcano, like I said before, all of the major NPCs, all of the NPCs that you trade items to, and two just chosen at random, because we didn't actually incentivize enough locations for all of the items. So these runners are going to be looking for 2 key items somewhere in the world. And on that note, they are off. So their first stop is here in Canaria Town, where they are going to be looking at equipment and spells available to their party. And in this case, we have Bane and Ice 2 available at level 1. That is a solid black magic to start us off, a good sweeper spell, and an instant death spell. For white magic, meanwhile, we have Fog 2 and Cure available out the gate. While available on class change, that Harm 4 being in a white mage locked spot is going to hurt. But yeah, so magic is restricted based on what a given class could cast in the original game. So because red mages cannot learn that second slot of white magic, no matter what spell lands there, they are not able to learn it. In the vanilla game, I mean. So in this case, Harm 4 landed there, so they can't learn it. Meanwhile, we have really cheap heals, and I didn't really get a good look at the weapons and armor, but it looked like we at least have chainmail, and I think I saw at least 1 cheap weapon, though with all those spells, we don't need it. We're just going to Ice 2 everything to death and move on with our lives. So the first order of business, we are going to head to the Temple of Fiends. The Temple of Fiends, of course, being the first dungeon you visit in the vanilla game. Those of you familiar with the original Final Fantasy might have noticed that there was a little bit of a land path off to the left as they were running up that isn't there normally. That's one of the map edits the randomizer makes. It creates a land path to the Dwarf Cave so that you're not forced to do Temple of Fiends every time first if you don't want. You usually do because, as noted, every major NPC that does something for you or gives you something will give you something in the randomizer, the way we have it set up. In this case, the king, who normally hands you the bridge, well, builds you a bridge, will give you a key item, as will the princess, who normally gives you the loot. In this case, I don't know what the king's going to give us. We could have checked that out the gate, but very few people ever do. The king just kind of gives you some stuff, because even if you haven't rescued the princess, it's very unfortunate for his relationship with his kidnapped daughter, but that's neither here nor there. What is here is Garland, and what's there is Garland's remains. We're going to save us a princess now on Caront's side, and Kenny will not be far behind him. Realistically, if they'd only brought one character, or one caster, they could have also thrown a Bane out, and that probably would have done the trick. Anyway, we get an Elven Special. That is a crown and an herb from the Princess and the King, respectively. So what that is going to do for us. The herb is turned into the doctor who tends to the elf prince. Normally you receive that at the end of the quest chain that the crown begins. In this case, we have it at the get-go, so the prince will give us something. Normally it would be the magic key. Today, who knows? The crown, meanwhile, can be used to trigger a fight with Astos, the Dark Elf, who lives in the northwestern castle, and he will give us something. So, we'll see where it goes from here. But we won't be going to Elfland right away unless one of these runners decides to do something spicy. What we're instead going to do is, Kenny is going to go up to see Matoya. He can't do anything with her yet because we have yet to find the crystal. It's somewhere in the world. But she does have 3 chests that he can check, and what he is looking for specifically is the canal. Again, in the vanilla game, you go through this whole long quest in the Inner Sea, the area we're in right now, to retrieve a thing of TNT. The TNT is then given to a dwarf who blows a hole in, essentially, the Strait of Gibraltar so that you can sail out to the rest of the world. What we have done is we've decoupled that canal from the dwarf who blows it open, and it is now in a box somewhere. Most likely it is in a box somewhere within the Inner Sea. It might not be. We might find a canoe and then get the airship and never need the canal. But it is guaranteed to be somewhere that we can get to it with the items that are available to us. Unlike some randomizers, Final Fantasy I's randomizer does not ever lock something behind itself. If you need an item to progress, then every item in the game is accessible. And Caront is making that spicy play. He's going to go check the Elf Prince now, rather than go over to Provoca. Provoca is the second town in the game, normally where you get the ship. The astute viewer would have noticed that we did already have a ship to start off with. That's another flag that we have set. So we will be going ahead and sailing over to Provoca, it looks like, on Kenny's side. That'll be another key item check, fighting the pirates in Provoca, which they'll go down really fast because we have ice too, and pirates have no health. No, seriously, like, I think the most health they can possibly have in this flag set is 13, maybe 14 HP. Ice 2 will clear them out real fast. Alright, so the Elf Prince hands over a slab. That is not immediately useful to us. That opens up a check in the town of Lefane, the NPC who normally gives you the chime after you turn it into Dr. Un to learn how to speak Lefanish. But that's neither here nor there. Lit 3, Lock 2, and Temper. Alright. Lock 2 and Temper, probably the 2 most important spells. Lock 2 was very bugged in the original game. That has been fixed in this game, so that it actually does reduce your enemy's evasion. Level 2 has Heal 2 and Exfer, both also useful. But Lock 2 basically reduces your enemy's evasion, making it easier to hit them, which is very nice when you have to make a lot of swings of your sword. Lit 3 obviously is a high damage spell. Temper is probably the most important spell at level 2 black magic. It can be used to buff your a character's offense, their attack power, 14 points at a time. That can add up very quickly if you stack it. It's going to be very key to your offense late game because that's basically where a lot of your damage is coming from, especially on that thief. Because the pirate hands over the cube. Again, that's for... Sorry? That is progression. But not the kind of progression we need right now. Ah, sorry about that. Had something go down my throat. Alright. Yeah, F's in chat. Alright. So where was I? Right, magic. Temper. Exfer. There we are. Exfer. So Exfer is essentially Dispel, for those of you familiar with later Final Fantasies. It will strip an opponent's resistances and make it easier to land spells on them. Not the most, useful spell, because generally anything that you're fighting that you would want to strip resistances from is probably going to be something that can resist the spell even with no resistances. Ah, I saw Quad X at level 3 black magic. That would be Power Word Kill. If something doesn't resist the death element, and that is an inaccessible life too. Go ahead and put more Fs in chat. But yeah, so Exfer basically strips defenses for an opponent, specifically resistances, and that's not going to be very useful against most of the things you want to strip resistances from, because they usually have high enough magic defense to nullify it. And that is a tail at the item shop here in Elfland. I don't know if we saw that earlier on Caront's side, but either way. The important thing is that what we're looking at right now is a situation where we have two choices. Either we go to Marsh Cave, or we go to Northwest Castle, or we go to Dwarves. I guess there are three choices. We can go turn that crown and see if it turns into a canoe and opens up more of the world, or we can go to Marsh Cave and try to find that canal, or we can go to the Dwarf Cave and check the two chests there and hope that's a canal. Judging by the way these runners are moving right now, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them decide to chase the crown first. But yeah, so that tail is probably not going to get picked up until much later, but the nice thing about that is it's not something you immediately require. Like, if that were, say, a canoe at 55k, that would be a little more problematic for runners, just because they want that. You need that, almost certainly. It is very hard to get a seed where you don't need the canoe. Actually, it's impossible in this flag set, because, well, yeah, it's almost impossible in this flag set. You would need items to land in a very specific configuration of locations to where you would never need the canoe. But speak of the devil, and it shall be handed to us by a Dark Elf. So this is where that Quad X spell would have come in really handy, because Astos is almost never going to have more than 300 HP, and Quad X automatically kills anything that is not resistant to the death element, and wow, I think that was an ogre that could turn people to stone and creeps with blaze. That was brutal. Yeah, Avos, I think you can just eke out not needing the canoe if Lefane and Gaia have, like, equipable items, the waterfall has the tail, and Ordeals has the one... Oh no, you're right, because we have to be able to get to ice in Volcano. Yeah, you're right. So, anyway, where was I? But yeah, so, never mind, ignore everything I said. Because, yeah, I forgot that Ice Cave and Volcano exist. This is why I'm not in this tournament, folks, because I forget things like places you're supposed to go. Anyway, with that canoe from Astos, that basically means we're going to avoid Marsh Cave just a little bit longer unless one of these runners decides to be very spicy. Just because you don't want to go to Marsh Cave. Marsh Cave is... well, it's horrible in the original game, it's just as horrible when you randomize it, because what winds up happening is one of the flags we use scrambles up enemy abilities and scripts. So, you know, any given enemy in the game can have any kind of an attack routine and any kind of attacks behind that routine. And Marsh Cave has a very diverse ecosystem for being essentially 4 floors. So what that translates to in practice is you wind up seeing all kinds of monsters that have all sorts of horrible abilities. And one of those horrible abilities we saw on Caront's side, I believe, was that creeps have blaze. And yeah, just to back up what Avos was saying in chat, we do have a flag set that does allow you to get the airship without the canoe, but that is not on today. Alright, Dwarf Cave does at least hand over a Mage Staff. That is going to be very useful. The Mage Staff casts the Fire 2 spell when used in battle. That will save on spell charges, and for a good chunk of this game, that'll be sufficient damage to clear out a good chunk of some groups you really don't want to have to deal with. But anyway, Kenny is currently... I would say he's in the lead right now. He's got information, he's got progression, and Caront is making the spicy Marsh Cave play. So this could prove interesting. Like I said before, there are two item locations that are what we call loose, as in they're not tied to a particular spot. What they are instead is essentially free in a chest somewhere. Something that you probably are used to seeing if you watch other randomizers, where it's just like, I opened a random box, and I got something I desperately need to finish the game. Oh, that's a bad miss. So, let's hop back for a moment while Caront is running to check these boxes. I mentioned before, spells are locked based on what you could learn in the original game for a particular class. So, for example, red mages can only learn the first and third slot spells of white magic. When they class promote, they can then pick up the fourth slot of level 1 white magic as well. Level 6 white magic, they learn the second, the third, and the fourth slot. The spell Life was in the first slot, and if you're paying attention earlier, you will note that at level 3 white magic, we had Life 2 in slot 4. That is also unlearnable by red mages. Neither one of these runners will be able to pick up Life. However, Caront is already rewarded for this spicy marsh cave play. He has a defense sword. I don't think he had the money to pick up Warp and Elfland, and I don't think he has the levels to... And a Zeus Gauntlet. Okay. Okay. I see you. I see you. So, are these other two boxes also going to have castable items in them? Because, yeah. No, just a silver shield and 143G, but Caront is going... If Caront can get this out of here and save, that is going to be some real good defense and offense. So, the Zeus Gauntlet and the defense sort of like the Mage Staff. They cast spells. Specifically, the Zeus Gauntlet casts Lit 2, and defense casts the spell Ruse. Ruse is a spell that essentially increases your evasion by, I want to say, 80? I think it's 80. Yeah, it's 80. So, what that means in practice is 3 casts of Ruse puts your evasion so high, literally the only way to hit you is a critical. Which, spoiler warning, is very good for not taking damage. So, that defense sword that Kenny is very unlikely to find could be huge, especially with neither player having access to life to resurrection magic. Because you know what keeps people from dying? Not getting hit. And since we do have the Power Gauntlet incentivized, that will be extra helpful. And there is our canal. And yeah, that is one of the other changes the randomizer makes. Well, you can turn on. I actually sometimes turn it off, but that's a different story. The randomizer will basically turn on dashing, and that's a heal helmet. Holy cow. Marsh Cave, more like Magic Item Cave. But yeah. Basically, though, the randomizer enables a dash, which is essentially you move at the same speed the ship does. So you might be asking, what's the point of taking the ship then? The encounter rate. The encounter rate on the ocean's a lot lower than on land, so you have to do a lot less work to avoid fights. But it is very nice in dungeons because you just go across the map, and it's great. So, Caront is currently dealing with these things that those of you familiar with the original game would know are not wizards. One of the other flags we have turned on is Spike Tile Shuffle. And what that basically translates to is all of these forced encounter tiles that you know and hate have different encounters. Mirror Match Cheese, they both just chose this themselves. But yeah, so what that translates to in practice is... The crap was I talking about? Right. encounter tiles. There we go. So what we've done is you have several options. You can choose to mix up the encounter tiles. So, you know, the wizards might be at that nightmare tile in Ordeals. The mud golems from Ordeals might be standing where the Phantom normally does. And the Phantom might be what blocks your access to the robot and waterfall cave. For this tournament, what we have turned on is what we call the B tile. Wow. Muxed with... okay, yeah. Kenny's just resetting out of that. But yeah, so what that translates to in practice is... Sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. So what we have turned on are what we call the B encounter tiles. So basically every encounter in the game has an A and a B side, you know, like a vinyl. And this refers to how they're stored in memory. Essentially, each bit can be used to represent one of two fights. It's just a way that the developers compressed information so that they could fit more into the game. And so a given fight can be either A side or B side. So what we have turned on is the encounter tiles, instead of being shuffled amongst themselves, are instead just randomly picked out of the B-sides. And sometimes that's good. Caront saw that fight that's just Gur Imps and a werewolf. That's a B-side encounter. Not every B-side encounter has to be awful. On the flip side, a B-side encounter can also be 3 to 7 sorcerers. Yeah. And while we do have things like Death Touch randomized, so the sorcerer, well, shuffled is how we term it, but anyway, the sorcerers don't have Death Touch necessarily. There is a very small chance they do, but they might not. That being said, you still don't necessarily want to fight 7 sorcerers in Marsh Cave. That sounds unpleasant. I think it sounds unpleasant, and I'm not even playing this seed. But yeah, so, and yeah, Caront demonstrating that you cannot learn that Life 2 at level 3, and he will not be able to pick that up even when he class changes. If he class changes. That is White Mage, White Wizard locked in slot 4. I believe in the vanilla game that might be Heal. Anyway, so, where were we? Right, Kenny has been checking boxes here in Volcano. I have not seen anything too valuable pop out of that. But admittedly, I only have one eye and there are 2 screens. So it's very easy for me to miss something. If y'all notice that, like, a runner picks up something really good, feel free to yell it excitedly in chat and use your favorite hype emotes. Thank you, Gen C. Yeah, Opal Shield, not the worst thing to find. You can either convert it into money or strap it onto a knight in the event you don't find the Aegis Shield. So yeah. Otherwise, it looks like Kenny kind of has busted trying this top floor volcano. It is rare for Armory to turn in nothing. Caront, meanwhile, with that canal, is going to be able to make some checks via the ocean. We already have the vendor item, so the main advantage this gives him is if he finds the Oxyel, that's early access to Sea Shrine. Oh, I guess he can also go check Ordeals and Waterfall now. Aye, matey. Ye be having a pirate on commentary. And I'd be talking like this the whole time. But I suspect that Speed Gaming be pulling me right to talk if I were doing this for an entire stream. Maybe check back in September, and we'll see what we can do on that one. But yeah. So what we've been going on... Yeah, what we've got going on right now is Caront making some checks a little bit behind Kenny, but considering he cleaned out Marsh Cave, he's honestly not far behind. So he is going to be picking up his bottle, which he can't do anything with until we find the floater. So, at this point, Caront has two options. He can either make the play to Volcano and Ice, or he can say, you know what, I've got multiple level 3 elemental spells at low level. I've got Bane in my back pocket. I don't have much in the way of healing, but that's okay, because I can just go, because I'll just go murder a bunch of things on the northern continents. Because, honestly, he's got the firepower. He has the ability, if he wants to just go ahead, blast through ordeals in a waterfall cave, come out with some decent experience and 2 more key item checks. He's probably not going to do that, because that's a kind of... that's a play that's very spicy. Not quite, you know, jumping into marsh with no sweepers, or going to Mirage Tower spicy. And we can't go to Mirage Tower anyway, we don't have the chime. But... and yeah, these Peds look like they are very, very fragile today. So, Caront is going to pick up some quick XP here. I believe that they are an early encounter in the table. Yeah, that is a first encounter off a power cycle, it looks like. Alright, we have a question. What else randomized? Oh boy! Alright, so yeah, first of all, items and chests are randomized. And chests, in this context, includes NPCs. So, the King and Princess, in this case, gave us the crown and the herb to start things off. That also includes the fetch quest NPCs. So, handing in the crown to Astos does not get you the crystal. In this case, it actually got us the canoe, I believe. Yes. Alright. So, in addition to that, though, items and shops are randomized. So that includes which item is where the bottle normally is, and which shop is selling that vendor item slot. In this case, we know it is the tail for sale for 55,000 gold pieces in Elfland. So we probably will not be seeing the Oasis tonight. That also includes weapon shops and armor shops. So you might see the silver sword for sale in Canaria, which I believe we did in this case. In addition to that, magic is also randomized. If you look over, you might notice that, for example, Caront has Lit 3 at level 2 black magic. That is Not Your Eyes playing tricks on you. Lit 3 is a level 2 spell today, which means we have it for days, along with Bane. And yeah, you can see there that the steel armor prices are also randomized. So steel armor, normally a very expensive suit of armor, today is very inexpensive. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these runners decides to slap that on their fighter if they don't find ice armor soon. We know that they've seen it. So those are the most noticeable things. Other things that you might not notice as easily. Enemy stats have been randomized. I believe the range is something along the lines of 40-something% to 230% of their vanilla values. At least for boss. I think it's like 50 to 200 for normal enemies. So what that means in practice is every individual stat enemy has, except for for magic defense and morale, is randomly multiplied by a value that adjusts a certain scaling from their vanilla value, either up or down. So, what that can mean is you can wind up with some very evasive bosses, or some very tanky bosses, or you can wind up with a, you know, Tiamat that falls over to a stiff breeze. In addition to that, what we've also randomized is enemy scripts, enemy spells, and enemy skills. So what that means in practice is an Agama might have no skills whatsoever. Or it might have a script similar to the Eye in vanilla, where it just has a bunch of abilities, or a bunch of skills. And those skills won't necessarily be a bunch of gaze attacks. Those skills might just be, you know, Blizzard, the damage poison, the stone poison. About the only thing that isn't part of that general shuffle is the abilities that Warmech, the 4 Fiendry fights, and Chaos himself have. They are in their own separate pool that gets mixed amongst themselves, which means that you can see nuclear all over Temple of Fiends. And I believe we did see a black shirt pickup, which is going to be nice, That's another of those casting items, and it's also good armor for that black mage. But yeah, so that's all of the randomization I believe we have on for this flag set. There's more options than that, though. We have an entrance shuffle, we have floor shuffle, we have the ability to stick towns at the bottom of dungeons, we have the ability to completely randomize touch attacks, so that, you know, you might see 4 death touches in a seed instead of just 1. You might, let's see, you can shuffle item magic. So instead of finding a staff that casts confusion, you might find a staff that casts nuke, or fade, or lamp. Everyone loves the stick that casts lamp. Let's see. You have the ability to randomize weapon stats. That's an experimental flag that's almost certainly going to be put live after the tournament. We lovingly call it blurst weapons. That's basically giving weapons a +5 to a -5. One of the other flags that's not on, sadly, for this tournament, randomizes the layout of the waterfall cave through procedural generation. And there's a few other floors that are still in the works. And there's a couple of other mods that people have been playing with the randomizer that allows for things like that. You can randomize what spell levels are available in spell shops. That's also off for this tournament because I'm about the only person that likes that setting. So yeah. And yeah, if you've caught any of our Iron Gull Heavy Metalweight matches, you've seen blurst weapons a good bit. And those are not those can use a lot more liberal flag sets. So that's why you're seeing it there, but not here. This is generally, with our spring tournament, we try to be a little more relatable. But we do find a crystal at the incentive chest here in Volcano. Random exits. I believe that there has been some discussion of that. The issue is the way that exits work. It's sometimes difficult to set them up. We do have floor shuffle. So what floor shuffle means is you walk into the Temple of Fiends or Canaria Castle. You are now standing on the 3rd floor of Volcano. You go to the 3rd floor of Volcano. You are now standing on the 2nd floor of the Floating Fortress. You somehow survive the 2nd floor of the Floating Fortress. You are now in Bahamut's chambers. So we do have something like that available. As far as, you know, you go in, you go down a staircase, you go back up that staircase, you're somewhere different. That's not really as easily doable in Final Fantasy I's engine. But if that was what you meant, we can probably... You might be able to convince someone to do that if you don't want to take a crack at it yourself. I like floor shuffle personally, because I like going on adventures, and I assure you, floor shuffle is an adventure. It teaches you exactly what every spell in the game is capable of doing. Because that's the thing. The astute viewer may have noticed I got really excited about the Bane spell. And someone who is familiar with, you know, more modern JRPGs, or even just like Super Nintendo era RPGs, maybe sitting there going, why would you be excited about an instant death spell? Those never work. And the answer is because Final Fantasy I is different. I like to refer to Final Fantasy I as the greatest unlicensed D&D game ever made. And that goes down to sometimes you just get a critical failure when your opponent saves on a spell. We like to call that 3 and 256ing, because even if something completely resists a spell and has stupidly high magic defense, there is still a 3 and 256 chance that I didn't see what the red giant just did to Kenny, but I hope he can get out of this. Oh, he just hits really hard. That is rude. But he misses the red mage. I'll get back to what I was talking about in a minute. This is clutch right here. If he can manage to eke out a victory against this red giant, which he does not. So all of those boxes he just opened, he just lost. but he knows the crystal is down there, so I guarantee you he is going back down. And this is a fairly fast check. Volcano, every one of these lava tiles, you do not take encounters when you step on them. You take a hit point of damage per step, but you do not take actual, like, fights. So Volcano is a deceptively fast dungeon, in spite of having a lot of floors, because on most of those floors, you're only taking a handful of fights. And someone bookmark that and remind me to go back to talking about fights in a minute, because I want to finish talking about what I was saying before. Which was something. Crap. You know what? I've lost it. Alright, so let's talk about fights. So, 3 and 256. Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver. Alright, so, yeah, so any given enemy in this game, including Chaos and any of the bosses, you always have a chance to hit with an instant death spell. There's no such thing as a quote-unquote boss bit in Final Fantasy I. Everything can be death spelled, and a lot of things can be death spelled otherwise. And because death magic doesn't necessarily have the death element, Bane, for example, is a poison element death effect. The spell Zap is time elemental. The Quake spell is earth elemental, and so on and so forth. What you wind up with is a situation where you can clear a lot of fights in this game by just instantly murdering everything. It doesn't necessarily work on a lot of things because they have very high magic defense, and so they're more likely to save against whatever you're trying to do to them. But there's a lot of cases where you can just say, for example, toss Quake out and then Lich dies. And so on and so forth. So, speaking of why you would want to just throw instant death out on anything and everything. So, Final Fantasy I, for folks who haven't really watched or played this game too terribly much, is a very unique game, in my opinion, when it comes to randomization. Because, unlike a lot of games, Final Fantasy I is probably one of the most can-kill-you-at any time games out there. Especially when you randomize it. Or even when you don't randomize it. The vanilla fights are mean. So every fight in this game, just about, has something you can do to just take your party down if you have a little bit of bad luck or are ill-prepared. So, this has a twofold effect. One, it means that anytime you can avoid taking fights, you want to try and do so, because, you know, even a group of 4 wizards can just punch your lights out with no abilities, as you just saw. That thief went from almost full health to almost dead. But the other thing is, that means fights take up a substantial portion of your runtime. Because you're constantly getting into them. A lot of them are unrunnable. That's what that wait command means. That is a feature that the developers put in. If a fight cannot be run from, then you'll see the wait button there instead of the run button. And that was because when we shuffled whether or not an encounter was unrunnable, we realized there's no way to convey that information to a player otherwise. If you don't shuffle unrunnability, which I guess is something else that we shuffled that I forgot to mention. Surprise rate and unrunnability are also shuffled. So, whereas in the vanilla game, you know, shadows are always going to ambush you, they might not. Instead, it might be, I don't know, worms. Or iron golems. Or vampires. But yeah, so fights in general take a while. So, in the case of Volcano, because you're not getting into as many fights as you would in, say, a dungeon of a shorter length, like, say, Ice Cave. Yeah, you're generally going to get into less fights in Volcano than you are in Ice Cave, simply because you're stepping on a lot less tiles where you can get into a fight, because of all of the lava. And so Volcano is a deceptively quick dungeon. That was the original point that I started on 20 minutes ago. Volcano, deceptively fast. Bottom line. So, yeah. So yeah, that's why these runners are doing these deep dives in the volcano, because they can get in and out relatively fast. Like, they're losing a bit of time healing up, but anywhere else you go, you're doing that healing anyway. So it's just, you know, maybe a little more spread out. Like, you may be taking 50 damage in a fight, but you're doing that 4 times instead of, you know, taking 100 damage from running over all these lava tiles and then needing to heal up. So it's a relatively safe check, aside from the part where the game can kill you at any time. Things are just mean in this game. But yeah. Sorry for the brief pause there. I'm having a little bit of stream lag on my side, so I need to refresh real quick. But Kenny has dug that crystal out, and Caront is on his way to picking it up. Kenny opted to not fight Carrie, which I do not blame him for. Just like Volcano is a deceptively fast dungeon, so too is whatchamacallit. Carrie, a deceptively dangerous boss. Because here's the thing about Carrie. She has a ridiculous amount of magic defense, especially for when you run into her in the game. But on top of that, she also has a lot of resistances and has a lot of hits. So what that translates to in practice is Carrie hits like a truck, or can hit like a truck, and just tank your attacks. So you can very easily wind up in a situation where you are going to wind up just getting your head handed to you by Carrie. Now, we did see Kenny go ahead and take advantage of Black Mage spell access to get that nuke available. So, I mentioned before that there's a lot of elements in this game. So, you know, the elements, there are 8 of them. Fire, ice, lightning, earth, status, poison, time, and death. Nuke is a non-elemental damage spell. That means the only thing that resists it is having a high magic defense. High magic defense is not something that comes up too terribly often, and when it does come up, you're still landing, you know, probably over 100 damage with Nuke. I believe when it's saved against, its range is like 100 to 200 or something like that. So you're still hitting for a lot with Nuke. And against most of the things that are going to resist it, because they have high magic defense, that'll kill them anyway. Or at least put a healthy chunk out of their HP. Against the Fiend refights, not so much, but by then you're hopefully just hitting them really hard with a sword. But yeah, anyway, getting back to Carrie and why she's deceptively dangerous. That high magic defense means even if you can cast Nuke, she's probably not taking 400 HP of damage from that Nuke spell that you have. She's probably going to take 200 damage. Now, granted, she probably only has about 800 HP, if she rolled well. But if she's, you know, punching your party very hard, and happen to roll well on Absorb, you may not have enough spells to kill her before she kills your caster. And that's the problem with Carrie in general. Like, sure, her weakness is status elements, so you can, in some ways, negate her by just shutting her down with Confuse, or one of the stoppage spells. And yeah, so that actually brings up the other problem with fights in this game. So... Oh! Okay, we're gonna go back. We're gonna earmark that, because we need to talk about what Kenny just found. That's the ruby. So, those of you who've played the vanilla game know that you get the ruby from the chest behind Vampire in Earth Cave. And then you use that to feed the Titan, to go talk to Sartre, to get the rod, blah blah blah. So, one of the other changes the randomizer can make if you turn it on is what we call the Titan's Trove flag. What that means in practice is the Titan is moved back a few steps, and the wall of his cave is altered slightly to create a choke point that he blocks from whichever end you walk into. So if you find the airship early, which is very possible, you do not get to just skip the Titan and go open the boxes in the back of his cave. You still have to have the ruby. That's also relevant because the Titan's Trove is one of our incentive locations. The far left chest in the Titan's tunnel can have the Titan in it, or can have the Titan's, whatchamacallit. Yeah, can have a key item. That's the word I wanted. Thank you, Woat. No problem, Woat. Glad you're here, man. Right. So, you can get an incentive item out of that far left chest in the Titan's Cave. So, that doesn't matter here. We don't have the airship. What that does mean, in general, is that ruby is rough. Because what that ruby means is you probably are going to need the canal. Now, Kenny is making the right play. He's going straight to Marsh Cave. And we know that this is a fairly tame marsh. And this also makes sense. At this point, his two choices are go clean out Ice Cave or go clean out Marsh Cave. And of the two, they're both equally rude, so doing Marsh before Ice makes sense. Now, he could have he could honestly have made the gamble that, you know what, I have access to the Warp Spell, I have level 4 charges, I'm just going to go to Ice Cave, pull the incentive item, and go back to check it later. Kenny, you can't equip the Zeus Gauntlet. Stop trying to equip the Zeus Gauntlet. Ooh, this is dangerous. We know that crawls have Blaze, and that will still kill him, but he gets away. So, regardless, he made the right play. We know the canal is down here, and that will allow him to go check the Titan and Sarda. I will be shocked if he bothers to clear out even the rest of the bottom of Marsh Cave when he finds that canal, because he knows that there are 2 incentive items, one of which is the airship, or one of which could potentially give him the floater, which would give him the airship, which would get him airborne, which would allow him to go check that bottle he's been toting around, but more importantly, gets himself some cash so that he can go buy that tail, so that he can then go get that class change and start swinging that defense sword. And tossing that opal shield on and whatnot. So, we'll see what he does. But in the meantime, Caront is continuing to dig out this volcano, which we know didn't really have a whole lot aside from that crystal leading to Ruby. Now, what'll be interesting to see is what Caront does from here. Because he could opt to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and go check Ice Cave. I've already cleared out Marsh, and then I can just check Matoya later. Which he can. But we'll see what he does. He could just go ahead and say, I don't want to do Ice Cave right now. I already made the early Marsh dive, and okay, Kenny dodges a bullet with an ambush from that bone crawl encounter. Because that very easily could have turned to him getting blazed if initiative had rolled slightly different. But yeah, Caront, already back at this chest, gets away from the blue dragons, is going to run from the wizards, because what's the point in fighting them? And gets away. I didn't even notice they had poison touch earlier. That's unpleasant. But he does get the crystal. Okay, so jumping back to what I earmarked before. Fights in this game. The other thing about them is they can take a while. If enemies roll well, or have some bad luck on offense, or if you just get a large encounter that you don't really have an easy way to effectively take out. So what can happen, and this happens at any level of runner, whether you are a new runner to this game, or you are, you know, a 3-year veteran. Sometimes you get into a fight that takes forever. And when you come out of that fight, your character is facing down. Because your character always faces down after a fight. And then you forget that you didn't open the box that you got into the fight to get. And sometimes you forget which direction you were going in. And either way, you wind up needing to turn around and haul your stupid butt back to get the item that you missed. And we have seen in this tournament, occasionally people do just sometimes have that happen, and it turned out that that box had something very important. Which is why you will sometimes see runners turn around and open a box a second time. Because they're making sure that they actually opened the box that they intended to open. Alright. So, Caront is going to go ahead and take on Carrie too. And she does have Dark, which, just to correct the comment made in chat, Dark does do something in Final Fantasy 1. Basically, the one thing to keep in mind with this randomizer is, if something was supposed to work in Final Fantasy 1 and didn't, it works now. So Dark works. The thing is all Dark does is lower your hit percent. Which isn't that big a deal, in the grand scheme of things. Because generally you have enough of a hit chance to where you're going to connect. Carrie also having Hold. So Carrie, who is vulnerable to status, just breaking out all of the status magic. And unfortunately, and she also has damage poison. Yeah. Okay. So that right there is what I was talking about. See, Carrie 2, or Carrie 1, can roll very well. She can roll exceedingly well. She can roll dangerously well. Carrie is just kind of a problem. And yeah, you just saw that Carrie is very much a problem. So, we are going to see Caront retreat for the moment. Because he does not have enough gas in the tank to deal with that care. He needs more attack power. He needs mostly more attack power. He needs to be able to hit harder to get through that defense. Yeah. So, just for those of you who did miss this earlier, one thing to also know is almost every bug in this game has been squashed by our dev team, either directly or by adapting bug fixes that other people put together. So, the X-Force spell actually works now, strips defenses. Lock and Lock 2 actually will reduce enemy evasion now, and in addition, have a flag set that makes it so that they will always connect. This is very important to us because otherwise Lock and Lock 2 are garbage because they just don't have a lot of accuracy. That's been fixed. And by fixed, I mean that's been adjusted. Oh, how have I gone this long without bringing this up? Okay, another thing that the randomizer changes. Thieves. We doubled their hit percent growth. So before, Thieves have a hit percent growth of 2, same as a Mage. That means they don't get a lot of attacks, blah blah blah. We fixed that. Thieves now have a +4 hit growth, higher than a fighter even. What that means in practice is you hand a decent sword with a good crit rate to a thief, that thief is going to hack and slash a lot of things. You throw fast in that thief, there's a lot of enemies that die. Basically, Katana is now a really good weapon. The other thing that's been changed is, yeah, that's where we got the idea from Wildfire, now that I think about it, is we did get it from the remakes, and we put it into this, and oh god, it's amazing. But that's the other thing we fixed is weapons. They now have crit rates in line with their intended crit rates and not in line with what their ID number was. So that has disadvantaged the Excalibur a good bit, but it's still a really good sword because we fixed the special sword properties, which is nice. It's very nice. But yeah, so Temper, Saber, they also work right now. So you can buff up your party. Very nice. Houses actually save after healing your MP. That's nice. We actually have a flag on in this tournament where houses are just a full restore for you. So no one's complaining about that. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, because yeah, that is what we call the Titan's Trove. It basically means you cannot use the airship to skip giving the ruby to the Titan. And that's just a minor map edit. I think Meridian was the one who implemented that one. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. If anyone watching is of a programming mind and is really curious, this randomizer is open source. You can go to the website and find out FinalFantasyRandomizer.com, and we have just received our Temple of Fiends Revisited care package. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the weird crap that we have learned by randomizing this game, you know that door underneath the plate you need the loot to move in Temple of Fiends? It's locked by the key. Turns out the key is 100% required in Final Fantasy 1. And yeah, Vince, bringing up in chat, there's also an option to fix MDEF growth on the black belt. So the black belt, for those of you who are unaware, has a +4 growth to his magic defense. And magic defense is essentially what is used to guard against spell damage. Caront, forgetting that we do not have extended open progression on. There is a flag that adds a dock outside that desert and allows you to just kind of dock there. I don't actually, I don't know what he was doing. I think he may have just gotten a little bit mixed up on his oversea navigation, because he has the canoe. He doesn't need to bother with the dock. But anyway, yeah. Yeah, so black belt. So black belt gets a +4 magic defense, and magic defense is used to resist every spell in the game. When you class change, the black belt's magic defense growth as the master is +1. And hey, there's fast at level 5 black magic. I didn't catch that before. Yeah. So what happens in practice is the black belt, you don't want to class change if you have a black belt in your party. Not until you have your black belt at a level you want him to be at. So there are several flags that you can set that will change the black belt's magic defense growth, so that it's always going to be better after class promotion to get rid of that tension. That's why Kenny was coming here. He's checking these chests here. So none of the key locked locations are incentivized to this flag set, I believe. I don't think we incentivized Canaria. But if someone wants to correct me in chat, feel free. But I don't think that's the case. So, right. So Kenny is basically hunting for loose items, which, as I explained earlier, means he is looking for these important progression items that are just in a random chest, with no particular indication that that's where a good thing is. And these are easy checks to make, because you don't have to get into any fights, you just have to navigate over and run. So, and yeah, that's actually, by the way, another flag that I'm assuming people who are familiar with the original maybe noticed. We were able to get the key item from the Sages and Sarda without doing their respective quests. If either of these, yeah, and Caront is about to show off the third thing, although we have the crown already, so it wouldn't have mattered. Normally, you must have the crown to get to use the throne in the Castle of Ordeal. And, Kenny found a ribbon. You normally have to have beaten the vampire to be able to get a key item from Sarda, and you have to have killed the Lich in order to get a key item from the Circle of Sages. All three of those things have a flag toggle in the randomizer that says, nah mate, you ain't gotta do that. And all three are on for this tournament, because I'm, again, one of the only weirdos who's like, you know what, let's randomize this. Yeah, I do believe it. I think you're right, Pleb. I think it may be lighting the Earth Orb for the Circle of Sages. I know it is kill the vampire to be able to get the rod from Sarda. I know that that is specifically what triggers that event. I cannot remember if it's kill the fiend or light the orb that sets the flag for the sages to give you their key item. But either way, oh, hey, Sahags have rub. How did I miss it? But yeah, you are noticing, by the way, that Kenny is resetting out of a lot of these deaths because, dead. Alright, thank you. So yeah, it is lighting the Earth Orb specifically that sets it. So, ooh, ogres. Okay, never mind. The person who's like, yeah, you have to light the orb is backpedaling. So, yeah, I know it matters because we have one of the other flags that's not on for this tournament that is in testing is the Fiend Shuffle, which basically, as you would expect, shuffles the Fiends. Kenny did get poisoned somewhere in there, and, you know, or thought he got poisoned. I think it might have just been the music. Whatever. So, the only thing he's actually really found in this check all the key items trek, well, until now. So, Kenny, after checking all of these key lock chests, emerges with a ribbon and a Maza. So, yeah, that's the nice thing, by the way, about shuffling all of these boxes. The Maza actually shows up somewhere reasonable. Caront, meanwhile, finds the adamant. Alright, my tracker, Captain Nerd 2, is saying he thinks that it is lighting the Earth Orb specifically that triggers it, but, yeah. So, honestly, if anyone's curious what the trigger is, we do have a Discord. It's right over here in the chat. You can join us. And yeah, no, people have, even in the randomizer, they sometimes will forget to open that box if it's incentivized. The ruby chest behind Vampire. It's very easy to forget these things. Now, one thing that folks who are used to the vanilla game may find disorienting is Earth Cave is, how you say, far less of a problem in this randomizer. For several reasons. The main one being that Vampire and Lich tend to not have anything too dangerous. But, in addition to that, something else you might have noticed. Hey, I didn't know you could sail from Crescent Lake to the Ice Cave. How is that the case, Wote? Well, Wote, let me tell you. One of the other changes the randomizer makes is it edits the overworld in several ways. We call those the open progression flags, and you're actually seeing two of them right now. So Kenny took advantage of what we call southern open progression. One of the changes it makes is it connects the river systems that connect Ice Cave and Crescent Lake. Normally you'd have to go to a different location, but you can use the canoe to circumnavigate the southern continent. Caront is showing off northern open progression. Northern open progression adds a dock outside of Onrak in the Mirage Desert, so that you do not need an airship to go to Sea Shrine or to the Mirage Tower. The reason for both of these changes is to keep, basically to keep the randomizer from forcing a set progression more often than not. Because if you don't start with a free ship, what that would essentially do is force the ship to land somewhere early, so it might as well have been free, or force the canoe somewhere early, so it might as well have been free. So by opening up some of these options, it makes it so that key items can land in more places. And the same goes for the northern continent. By having those docks available, it makes it so that it's a lot easier to access other stuff. And Kenny has needed to pause, so I hope that y'all enjoy the menu music. We might be here for a moment. Now, the unfortunate thing for Caront in the meantime is he did not go back for that crystal. So he will not be getting that key anytime soon. He is, however, going to continue making checks. And yeah. So, on the subject of randomizer logic, while Caront is making this dive into Waterfall Cave, one thing to know about this randomizer, for the record, is that it does feature a... its approach to item placement tends to be more of throw it at the wall and see what sticks, then lay out a trail, a breadcrumb trail from beginning to end. So, what actually is going on when we're talking about opening up more locations for something to land is just, like I said, because things have to be accessible. In practice, what that means is the randomizer has to be able to go, oh, you can get this thing, and that is a really good spike tile here in Waterfall Cave, holy cow. Horribly dangerous because... well, not really. It looks like Gersharks did not roll a lot of health. That's some really good experience right there for Caront. But, now, what that means in practice is, like, the way the randomizer determines if a seed is valid or not is it basically sanity checks to see if things are, you know, accessible. And if they aren't, then the randomizer goes, well, I guess we're going to have to fix that. And it rolls again. So that's a rod from the robot. And yeah, a katana. That's really nice, because like I said, the thief is basically a blender. And that katana is one of the best swords in the game in the hands of a ninja because of that. Because it has a high crit rate, it does a lot of damage, and it's equipped by the character that's going to get the most swings out of it. So, when you have something like blurst weapons on, where it can be +5, yeah. So, key can never land in a key lock. Yeah. Because an item cannot lock itself. The game always tests for 100% access to everything. Which is also convenient for us, because at a certain point we can deduce information about the seed by looking at, what key items have we found? And what key items do we have left to find? And going, well, this can't be here, because then that would completely restrict our ability to get to this location. So, Kenny is finally going into Ice Cave. He took the other angle that Caront did not. And Caront actually looks like he might also be heading to Ice Cave, so we might see a high five here. And I think Kenny did pick up Warp. I don't know if Caront did. So, you don't get to see this trick in vanilla, because you can never have access to Warp before you have the floater. But, because of the way that Warp works, you can just teleport up and stand on this hole and open these chests. Basically, Warp just says, take the player back to the last staircase they stood on. Or the Overworld if the last place they were was the Overworld. So because of that, you can just drop down a hole and cast Warp and jump back up to stand on the hole. So yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, outside of a few kind of rude tricks, this has not been a very bad seed for either runner. Now, that Dragon Sword's going to be real nice for that Thief. Because that's one of the best weapons you can equip before class change as a Thief. And that's going to give him enough hits to really do some damage if you need to melee anything. Meanwhile, we've got uninformed pleb in chat showing that he is quite informed about math. So I will not be reciting any of what's being typed because that would be doing math live on Twitch, and we don't do that around here. Arithmetic's fair game, but not math. But yeah, all right. Judging by the way Caront's moving, he also has Warp at the ready. So yeah, I see Warp in his Black Mage's spell list, so he'll be doing the same trick and getting out of here with his, or at least getting his Chime and then making the decision of whether or not to dive the rest of Ice. We have not seen either of the loose items yet, which is interesting. But Kenny is about to be able to check 6 more chests, and I expect Caront's going to follow suit. Yeah, there he goes. So, the nice thing is both of these runners will only need to do the one trip through Ice Cave. Because they'll open the 3 boxes above the hole that takes you down to the floater chest, and then they'll just turn around and walk out of the room. Just take that staircase to the surface, because they'll have done everything in here. So, if you have played the original Final Fantasy I, and if nothing else, want to see what life is like when you don't necessarily have to do Ice Cave twice, come join us. Come play the Randomizer. That alone is probably worth its weight in gold. So, right, where were we? Both runners are in Ice Cave. Kenny has seen... Well, they both have seen everything in Volcano. Caront knows how absolutely rude... well, Wildfire, what I'm specifically referring to is the go through Ice Cave, drop down the hole, run through this bottom floor, go up to the top, go up to the floor above it, go to the hole on that floor, drop into the hole, fight the eye, get the floater, drop into the hole, do this part of the cave again. And yeah, then proceed to get your face stomped in by monsters in the cave. So, what happens in this is you can just do it once. Or, if you're not looking for anything, do the warp trick and then just leave. You have enough warp charges, probably. You can just go. But yeah, it's just basically avoiding some of the fights that Ice Cave can force you to take. And yeah, that's true. If you do ordeals first, you have levels and items in vanilla. But if you go straight to Ice Cave because you want to fly, because, you know, who doesn't like flying? It's a different story. So yeah, for most people, Ice Cave is an unpleasant experience, and you do get to skip that with the warp trick. So I would highly recommend playing the Randomizer. Heck, even if you don't like randomizing things, the devs have introduced a preset known as Improved Vanilla that just turns on all the bug fixes and conveniences. So, you know, you run around everywhere, you can buy 10 of an item at a time, all the spells actually work, all the weapons and armor actually works, all the enemies can do things. So, okay, you know what? Let's talk about this for a minute, because it's going to take a little bit for the runners to decide where they're going next. Spoiler warning, it's probably Earth Cave, because I think that at this point, that's the only dungeon we can... No, we could go to Sky. So at this point, the runners have to decide if they're going to Sky or Earth. Well, Kenny could opt for Volcano. Or not Volcano, Waterfall. Because he hasn't been there yet. But Caront at this point knows progression's not in Volcano, not in Ice, not in Ordeals, and not in Waterfall. Which means that either he needs to follow that chime and cube he has to the sky, or he needs to go to Earth Cave and use that rod. And there's a large contingent of this community, the Final Fantasy I Randomizer community, that would argue go to Sky. And honestly, I don't hate the Sky play. I'd hate it a lot less if I were in Kenny's shoes, because Kenny has that Mazda and that ribbon that he got from getting the crystal out of Volcano and turning it in. Caront doesn't have that luxury. He doesn't have the key, so he can't go open all those key lock boxes and find that good equipment. So Caront, I suspect, is going to do Earth, because he has the rod, he knows he can complete it, he knows there's nothing in Earth that's going to pose a threat to him at this point. Kenny, on the other hand, I could see him making the Waterfall play, seeing that he doesn't have that progression that he wants, you know, that Oxiel or that Floater, and saying, you know what, I've got a Mazda, let's go do Sky. So, let's talk about Overworld Manipulation while these two are heading to their next destinations. So, I'm sure most of you who are watching speed gaming at least are aware that there's a that you can fully manipulate Final Fantasy I, encounters and all. And Caront proving me a liar. He's gone straight to Mirage Tower. Not even bothering to turn in that adamant to see if it leads to anything. So, that's a spicy play right there, but I can't hate it. It's a little more dangerous for him than for Kenny just because his equipment isn't quite as good, but I don't hate the play. He's going to pick up some good experience if he can win any of these fights, and he has a thief so he can actually run away from things. But running away. So, Overworld Manipulation. So, yeah, you're probably aware this game can be very heavily manipulated. The randomizer adjusts that a little bit. One of the things that it randomizes is the RNG tables. So encounters are never going to be the same between any two seeds. So what does that mean in practice for the aspiring Final Fantasy randomizer player? Or as we like to call them, ducklings. What that means is you need to learn how to encounter manipulate. In other words, how to make it so that you don't have to take fights in the overworld unless you want to. And the way that works is essentially when you take a step on an encounterable tile in Final Fantasy I, what the game does is essentially pulls from a deck of cards. And if the card it draws says you get an encounter, you get an encounter. If you don't draw an encounter, you don't draw an encounter. And different tiles in different locations have different thresholds. In some places, you know, any face card might get you an encounter. In some locations, you know, it might just be only kings and aces give you an encounter. And in some places, you know, it might be, yeah, also throw in 10s and 9s for encounters. So, when you reset, depending on how you reset determines what happens to the stack of cards. If you just hit the reset button, like on the NES, or the virtual reset button on your emulator, that's called a soft reset. And what that'll do is just nothing. The RNG remains exactly where it is in the deck. However, if you hit the power button and turn the game on and back, off and back on again, that is what we call power cycle or a hard reset. And that returns the stack of cards to its original condition. So what you can do with this is you can map out how the deck of cards is by repeatedly starting the stack over whenever you save. And you can learn where you have nice long runs of not encounters versus where you won't necessarily hit a stack of cards or hit a run of encounters. What all of this boils down to get to what Wildfire was saying in chat about how they prefer to do ordeals first, or via ship, to avoid taking the overland encounters. If you know how to encounter manipulate and know that you have a good long run, what you can do is you can run around on the overworld, get a fight, soft reset out of that fight. The deck of cards remains where it is. So the next step you take, it deals out the card after that encounter, and you don't get that encounter. So you can basically manipulate the game through resetting repeatedly to get a stretch where you don't get into a fight. And then you can just, run to ordeals just as fast as if you were taking the ocean. The same net effect is to get, to ordeals as fast as you can by boat. The only time, this is the kind of seed where you still see people doing that play of sailing to ordeals, where they know that they don't have access to the floater anywhere that they have already been. So they have to go to one of these northern continent locations. So, we also saw Worms with Ruse on Kenny's side, and I think we saw it on Caront's side as well. And that's unpleasant. That's rude. Because Worms also have pretty good magic defense. You don't want to have to deal with that. So, Kenny has gotten the adamant. Unlike Caront, he is going to follow up on it. Remember, he can't just dock here and walk straight to the Dwarf Cave. But yeah, so, long story short, if you watch more of these seeds, you're going to learn, you're going to see these runners buy a lot of save items and do rapid fire resets. And that means, yeah. Alright, Kenny's going to be heading over to check Waterfall and Onrak. Adamant turned into Oxyale Space Drake. So, yeah, we got the Adamant we got the Oxyale from the Smith. So, where we are going from here. Yeah, so at this point, our floater is... Actually, yeah, we have a loose floater. We have checked every single possible turn-in at this point. Because we checked Crown and Herb first thing. We got the crystal and checked that. I guess we could have a loose TNT that turns into floater, but that's it. And yeah, Space Drake's right. We are in no mode at this point. Well, no, we're not in no mode. And yeah, Avos is also right. This is technically a floaterless seed. We don't need the floater to conclude this seed, because we have access to all 4 Fiend dungeons and can get to the Fiends in those dungeons. So the floater can be anywhere, and we technically don't need it. Now, both these runners, I think, want it, because that means that thief has a lot more survivability in a seed where you do not have access to life magic. And I didn't see what happened to Kenny, but considering the fact that he's back at Ordeals, I'm assuming he died. Because I can't see him resetting out... Oh, alright, he actually did just reset, yeah. And that can happen, is you just kind of muscle memory and reset, and then realize after the fact, oh, I needed that. I have become the fool. But that's fine. It's a very quick check to get back here. And it gives him more time to muse over what he's going to do next. Does he do Sky or does he do Sea? The main reason I could see him favoring Sea is his gear set is very good for clearing out Sea. Like, his gear and his spells. But he also has a lot of tools to clear Sky. And I don't know where he's going. Is he going back to Volcano? Like, is he going to go ahead and go kill Carrie? Because, well, we'll see what he does. He's going to go ahead and buy the tail, maybe? Okay, yeah, he's going to go ahead and pick up the tail because he's planning to go straight to the airship. So yeah, and yeah. Now it's one of those things. I have done something similar to Kenny, where it was just like my reset trigger was a little too quick, and I missed something important, and it sucks. But it's one of those things. You know what you need to do, so you can do it very quickly. And yeah, so Kenny looking like he's going to head for the Northern Continent. Not sure where he's going on the Northern Continent. But he's going to the Northern Continent. In the meantime, Caront going ahead. Well, he has no choice. He has to kill these Peeds, but he's not gonna turn down the free experience from just blasting them. But yeah, so kind of talked about a lot around here. These runners are kind of, you know, retracing the steps. It looks like Kenny is probably heading up to do the on-rack waterfall check. And Caront, I think, is heading back to Volcano. He is probably thinking that Crystal leads to what he's looking for. Okay, actually, chat, here's a question. Did Kenny go back to the Temple of Fiends Revisited? Like, I know he went back to Northwest, I know he went back to Elfland Castle, I know he went to Dwarf Cave, and I know he went to Canaria. I don't remember if he actually went up to Temple of Fiends to check those 3 key lock boxes. Because that could get very spicy if Caront is like, I bet my progression's a loose item, and goes and checks those boxes, and it turns out he's right. So, we're gonna have to see on this one. Because he's probably gonna turn in... He's gonna go get this crystal. He might not stick around for Carrie. But yeah, sorry for kind of slowing down a little bit. I have been talking for almost an hour and a half now, so I'm just kind of taking a moment to gather my thoughts, let the seed breathe. We've seen a lot of the stuff already, so... honestly, the monsters haven't been that bad this seed. Like, we've seen a few bad things. We've seen Blaze on creeps, we've seen, you know, basically obliterate all life on Earth. But other than that, like, we've mostly just seen things hit really, really hard, but not necessarily, you know, bust out a first-turn nuke or drop thunder on you or something like that. So, I have to assume that means that Sea Shrine is going to be awful. But yeah, so, in the... Caront is going to get his crystal, and he's got enough warp shots now. He is just probably going to skip all the dungeon floors where he can't just run around on lava for a while, and then be done with it. Or he's going to take this Blue D fight again and run for it. Hey, out of bounds, Bat! Good to see you, buddy! How you doing? Out of bounds, Bat is a friend. Alright. So anyway, Caront looking like he's going to go after this Carrie again. Now, Caront is the one who fought her before. I am impressed by this move, although... Okay, I was looking at Caront's screen. May anyone care to explain to me why Ace is currently the curator of a statue? Because I don't think he was doing that a minute ago. I'll let y'all explain that here in a minute, but in the meantime, Kenny is going to be picking up his katana, he is going to be getting his rod, and Caront is once again challenging Carrie for the right to move on with his life, except this time he is packing some nukes. And he is going to be putting that defense sword to good use. Still doesn't have that ribbon that Caront had. Fog 2 coming out to kind of soften the blow. I think his plan is basically make this fighter strong enough to survive. While the rest of the party attempts to chip damage Carrie down. And then hopefully he will eventually get his hands on a crit to actually kill Carrie. The only problem is she is apparently stun touch. That is unpleasant. But yeah, so stone poison on the big eyes. That's what we like to call ungood. Let's see. Ooh, Invis 2 is available to red wizards. That is nice. So Invis 2 is half as effective as Ruse, but you can cast it on the whole party instead of just the person casting Ruse. So, the good news for these runners... So the good news for both of these runners is they at least will have a few shots of Invis 2 if they don't find a white shirt. But the way this seed is unrolling, they're probably going to find the white shirt. Because I don't think either one of them is wanting to do Temple of Fiends without class changing, so they're going to dig out that floater. Yeah, so Fog 2 doing work on Carrie, at least in terms of keeping the entire party up. But yeah, now, Carrie's M-Def, like I said before, it's what makes her so deceptively dangerous. Other things that make her dangerous, Ice 2. I almost feel like you're better off having... Well, no, I think he's still swinging a silver dagger on that thief, but you're almost better tempering the thief, but that damage poison may seal the deal. Yeah, Caront resets out. He needs to go back, get the crystal, and just warp out. This carry is not going to go down without a class change. Like, honestly, you may want the class change just to be able to armor up for that carry. Yeah, no, Avos, you're absolutely correct. Carry 1's MDEF is, I believe, 170. And there is our loose floater in Mermaids. Along with an Excalibur. That's going to bring some offense to the table for Kenny, because he can slap that Excal on his knight. He can slap the katana on the ninja, hand the Maza off to his red mage, and basically anything that he can't kill with magic, he'll be able to carve up between those three characters. That is not true, pleb. Saying that stats are useless. Stats are actually vitally important in a lot of ways. That MDEF growth is incredibly powerful for keeping your party alive. Once you get close to 100 MDEF, all those touch attacks become much less threatening. Which, you know, is like level 25 for a black belt before class change. and everyone else a little bit later, but still good. HP is incredibly valuable for surviving attacks. I actually have a mod that I like to occasionally randomize that turns off all equipment restrictions. And even when you can throw heavy armor onto a mage, their lower HP pool actually matters a lot for whether or not they survive. I mean, part of the reason... So, strength. Let's talk about strength. Strength is used to calculate damage. But damage is limited by absorb. What you actually want isn't strength. It's hit rate and crit rate. Because strength determines base damage, but that's always going to be reduced by absorb. Whereas if you're getting a lot of hits, and you have a high chance of critting, that's where all of your damage comes from. So yeah, when you're saying something like, if you set strength to 99, it doesn't change anything, that's because it's not strength that actually determines damage at the end game. It's crit rate, and how often you're swinging to get that crit rate. And yeah, there may also be a cap on individual hit damage in play. But what that boils down to, though, is a fighter with Maza isn't what does a lot of damage. It's a fighter who's critting a lot with Maza that matters. That's why you can hand the Vorpal Sword, which is a garbage sword by base stats. It's basically a slightly better silver sword. But because its crit rate is so stupidly good, the Vorpal Sword is going to do work in the hands of a fighter because their hit percent growth is good enough to take a lot of swings. And yeah, that's why Fast is such a good spell. Also, because it doubles that hit growth. But yeah, before we fixed before we changed hit percent on the Thief, that was one of the reasons why the fighter was always going to be better melee than the Thief. Because even though Katana is a much better sword than Vorpal, the difference in how many swings a fighter was getting with the Vorpal sword versus how many swings a ninja was getting with the Katana, it didn't matter. Those critical hits you were landing mattered more, and the difference in strength meant that each of the critical hits the fighter was landing was better. Also, Kenny, I don't think he actually got the item that he cleared out his inventory to get. Which I didn't see what it was. But I'm assuming because he actually went and purged his inventory. But yeah. Yeah, Canuck. Carrie has Damage Poison, Stun Touch. I think she also has Hold or Stop. Ridiculously high Absorb. And at least double her at least her vanilla HP, probably closer to double her vanilla HP. All right, so it was the Opal Donut. All right, yeah, my tracker and chat confirmed me it was the Opal Donut from the ferry. Alright, and we found our other loose item. It looks like Encardia, so... Yeah, it was the Thor Hammer. Alright, so this actually shook out very similar to what I was kind of saying from the word go. Hey, Caleb. Okay, look, this has not been a mean seed aside from Carrie. It's just been a very, okay, look, Floater was at Mermaids, and Oxyale was, behind Adamant that we had to get from sailing to the Castle of Ordeals, and both Life and Life 2 are White Mage locked, and Nuke is like level 6, and I think Fade is Red Wizard locked. So, yeah, it's been an interesting seed. They got the tail. The tail was available fairly early on, aside from costing 55k. It's mostly just they keep bumping into things that kill them before they can actually turn in anything. But yeah, I mean, look at Kenny's thing. At this point, he can go kill everything. So yeah. Anywho, Kenny finally actually probably going to go kill a Fiend, and he's going to start with Lich. So... yeah. Kenny is going to be collecting him some... Kenny also realizing that he has better armor that he can be strapping onto his party, because he is now class promoted. So he is going to be doing that real quick. He also needs to strap that black shirt onto his black mate. Kenny? Kenny, did you just throw away the Opal Cheerio? I think you just... You reset out of that, young man. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that is... Especially when you are that shallow, you don't. But yeah, he did forget to change his equipment around when he class changed, but that's fine. It's not going to take him long. Caront finally getting his hands on that key, so he's probably going to make that same sweep. We know now that what he actually needs to do is go get him that Oxyale out of the Dwarf Cave, but I imagine that's going to be his next stop. If he hasn't already done it. So, the good news is he does have his Temple of Fiends Revisited care package now. So, he'll be able to do this pretty quickly. Yeah. Kenny, you can put the Zeus Gauntlet and the Flame Shield on your ninja. You need to do that. Well, your Flame Shield at least. Yeah, equip the Flame Shield. You're good. No. Put the Flame Shield on the ninja. There we go. Alright. Alright, there we go. He's still having to think. Kenny's a relatively new runner, so it's understandable he's having these moments, but... yeah, equipment management is sometimes a challenge in this game. This is the takeaway from all of this. And, okay, let's talk about Go Mode. Because I'm sure that there are people who are watching, who are thinking to themselves, yeah, how do you define Go Mode in this game? So, in my book, there are two kinds of Go Mode. There's Key Item Go Mode, and there's Actual Go Mode. Or there's Key Item Go Mode, and there's Equipment Go Mode. Key Item Go Mode is what normally in most games you think of as Go Mode. I have everything I need to complete this seed. I can stop doing things. Then there's Equipment Go Mode. Equipment Go Mode is different, because Equipment Go Mode is purely subjective. Equipment Go Mode is when you sit there and go, alright, I have everything I need to feel like I can finish the game. To where I don't think that I'm going to be stopped by Topher. Because Temple of Fiends Revisited, much like everything else in this game, can kill you at any time. And can kill you at any time, like, in several different ways. Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, Kenny remembering that ribbon. I imagine that ribbon is probably going to be the last... one of the last boxes. He's got good enough armor on this party to deal with most of the threats that Topher can present. He's got enough he's got the weaponry to deal with things. So, Caront is a good ways away from equipment go mode, because he still needs to go open boxes and find that Mazza, and needs to find the floater so he can class change and put good gear on his party. And yeah, if he does that, he's going to be rewarded. That is a dragon armor. So dragon armor resists the fire, ice, and lightning elements. When combined with the Aegis shield, which resists poison element, and the pro ring, which resists death element, you can defend a knight against all but earth, status, and time attacks. The ribbon protects against all elements. So, in a seed where you only get like one ribbon, but you can class change and find that dragon armor, you can basically make your knight good enough to deal with most of the things that are a threat. And yeah, I do have to agree with Avos in chat. Kenny is almost certainly not going to get that dragon armor. He has no reason to check the top of Earth Cave at this point. And yeah, Avos mentioning that Kenny generally doesn't open those boxes, which, I mean, even if he were in the habit, in this situation, I think he would say, I don't need them. It's not like they're, what should we call it? They're not free. They're not greed chests. They're not the kind of boxes you pop open just cuz. Kenny's done this a couple of times. I think there's something going on his side that's pulling him away. But, you know, it happens. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest, he can kind of afford this a little bit. Because Caront is going to open a bunch of boxes Kenny is not opening. Because, remember, Kenny knows he doesn't need any loose items. Caront doesn't. So he's going to be opening every chest in Earth. And then probably turning in that Oxyale, or turning in that Adamant for the Oxyale, and then opening every box in C. Because he's already checked the bottom of Sky, he knows what he's looking for isn't there. But he is going to get a ribbon, which he didn't have a ribbon previously, so that's going to be nice for him. But Kenny has already cleared the first speed bump and is well on his way to plowing over the... Because, again, when you have access to actually good magic and equipment, Earth Cave is a lot less threatening than you might remember it from when you last played the vanilla game. Yeah. Alright, I didn't see, did Caront take a wipe there, or did he warp out to save before diving deeper? I completely missed that. I guess if he runs back and grabs this ribbon, we'll know. He ain't leaving without a ribbon. But anyway, everyone get ready to say hi to Lich. It's probably by the time you hear me say that, you'll be needing to say bye to Lich. Because I can assure you, he is not going to live very long. So yeah, Mage Staff, cast a nuke, fire 2 from the Lich, that's adorable, and dead. And at an hour and 46 minutes and 50 seconds, we have lit an orb. I mean, he would have to have been alive E-tap in order to become an undead. Otherwise, he'd be a golem. Which, granted, he does share a category with golems, so maybe he's a golem? Who knows? But yeah, we have an Orblet from Kenny, so yay. And this will be his first time he's going up against this Carrie. We know what she can do, but we'll see what happens from him. Also, thanks to local Duckling Dwight for dropping a small raid on us. Good to see you here. You are just in time for the back end of what promises to be a really what promises to last a good bit longer. Now, the good news is Kenny's not going to spend much time in most of these dungeons. So, alright. Sorry, I was just checking the time. So, yeah, so one thing, too, though, is we do have a Super Mario Bros. 3 randomizer match scheduled for... Or it might just be normal Super Mario Bros. 3. Yeah, never mind, that's just normal Super Mario Bros. 3, it looks like. So, that's going to be happening in about half an hour. So, we're going to stick with this as long as we can, but it is one of those things where, you know, if this does start to run long, we will probably go ahead and kick things over to them, and encourage you guys to finish watching this out on these runners' streams. Which, if you're not already following them, I would recommend you do so, because these two have not had an easy seed today. The fact that we're just now getting orbs lit is not an indictment of either of them. Alright, thank you, Wildfire, for clearing that up. I'm so used to just reading the word rando into everything that it just kind of flipped me, but yeah. Yeah, that's a Super Mario Bros. 3 point-based tourney based on doing things to earn bonus points. By basically being more awesome than your opponent. From the sounds of it. So, I actually might watch that. But either way, Kenny is able to fast up his knight with a Maza in hand, or possibly an Excal. It doesn't matter, Carrie is probably not long for this world. Throwing out a Bane, that's not going to do any good. 3 hits for 281. Carrie retaliates with a weak counterpunch. Tanks another 350 damage. Kills the ninja. The knight should still have this. Yeah, terminated. So yeah. Yeah, so we will kick it over to Speed Gaming, or to them if this match runs for too terribly long. And yeah, Speed Gaming will keep us apprised of the situation, but in the meantime, we are going to keep going with this. Yeah, Kenny getting the unfortunate news that that 4th slot at level 3 is unlearnable without a white mage even after class change. And apparently werewolves had lit 3, so that's unpleasant. Alright, so we'll keep you guys assessed on how long we're going to keep up with this, but for the time, at least that red wizard can pick up Fade and Cure 4, which is going to be nice. So, Kenny has not picked up his other 2 party members yet. He may be deliberating going 2-man the rest of the way. So, that's actually something I haven't touched on yet. How experience is distributed in Final Fantasy I. Basically, every enemy has a set amount of experience that they yield. And at the end of the fight, all living party members divide the experience earned. So, it is a viable strategy in the randomizer if your spells land right, and equipment lands right, to just have a fighter and a red mage up. and just, you know, level them super high. Because, again, things like hit percent and HP matter a lot for keeping your party alive. So higher levels equals good. That's not what Kenny was doing here. I think he just wanted to not bother running to a faraway clinic when he knew there was one in Onrak, but he could have kept the fighter and the red mage up. There are flags that turn off that behavior that make it so that you can't just, quote-unquote, Dan your party and go two-man and get bonus experience, but that's neither here nor there. What we are looking at is Kenny is going to very quickly kill Kraken, because he is at most checking 5 boxes in here, and every floor is pretty much a shot straight to the end of the floor. So, barring a particularly rude encounter table, Kenny will probably have Kraken down in about 4 minutes. Well, barring a rude encounter table or a rude Kraken. Anyway, Vampire's dead on Caront's side, and he is going to very quickly take care of Lich and move on. But in chat we have a request for a tale. A tale of a hero by the name of Dan. Yes. For you see, this behavior, this vanilla strategy of distributing the experience to only the living has a long and storied tale in the history of Final Fantasy running. Not even randomized, just the normal game. For, after all, if you wish to go fast, you cannot be wasting time grinding. Also, it's Final Fantasy I. Grinding is tedious and potentially fatal. And so it came to pass that the runners of yore, before they figured out that you can just punch everything in the face at very, very specific timings and punch it in the face more efficiently, would kill off a party member. And indeed, I believe it was Feast of El, he who reigned supreme over speed gaming, who introduced the idea of naming your party in such a way that the unfortunate but very essential hero who laid upon the floor became known as Dan. And so it was Dan whose power was truly what laid at the heart of the feet of chaos, for without his sacrifice, his 3 allies would not have the strength needed to survive that dive to the heart of evil. And so it is why we call it Danning to this day. For it is a sacrifice that must be made sometimes, but it is the most essential. Anyway, Caront found a Bane sword while I was doing all of that. That's gonna help him, because that's free Bane, and as I mentioned previously, that's really... yeah. So, Kenny's probably gonna be wishing he had that Bane sword. 2 casters with Bane... No, 1 caster with, like, Bane at level 1. And that's gonna be helpful on Kraken, but... free Bane would be really nice. So... Right. We're gonna wait for him to do some quick equipment redistribution, and then we're gonna see what he does with this. But, yeah. So, here's the thing about Kraken and Tiamat. The first forms of them. Both of them are actually very vulnerable to instant death. In Tiamat's case, it's because she is vulnerable to the poison element. So you can poison her fairly efficiently. In Kraken's case, his magic defense just kind of sucks for a boss. And the way it winds up working out is his magic defense is so much lower than Tiamat's that he has the same chance of being baned or hit with the break spell as she does. So you can just bane Kraken. It's got, like, I think an 18% chance of success. But in this case, you can just be Kenny and hit Kraken with a sword, and then he dies. So that's 3 Fiends down on Kenny's side. And yeah, it took about 4 minutes. Nice. So, alright, we just have Tiamat left. We do have the possibility of dealing with a war mech on the Bridge of Destiny. It is not required in the sea. So, that is a little bit unfortunate, but, yeah, war mech is still on the table. We'll see what happens. Caront, meanwhile, just about to lich one. Yeah, 26% chance Avos, that's for Brack. Bane, I believe, is 18 to 20% chance, somewhere in that. Like, you definitely want to prefer Brack to Bane, and this is just a general tip for anyone who wants to get into playing this game after listening to me ramble about it for 2 hours. Possibly 2.5. But yeah, so Brack has a much higher chance of landing than Bane or literally any other instant death. It being the only single target instant death spell out of Rub, and Rub doesn't count because Rub sucks. Okay, and Quad X also, but Quad X is special. Amongst the single target instant death spells, Brack has the highest chance of connecting. So if you're in a situation where you know you can use poison element spells on something, and you have Brack, it's the spell to use all the time. And if something is immune to poison, you can X for it, and then Brack it. Brack is the only spell that has above a 3 in 256 chance of instant killing Chaos. And for that to happen, you do have to X for him first. I believe it's a 20% chance of X for landing on Chaos. So, what you want to do against Chaos is X. So if you want to try the instant kill approach to Chaos, you basically are looking at X-ferring him, and then you have a 5% chance of bracking him. So, that's your fun fact for the day. Yes, you can instant kill the final boss on a natural 20. You have to just set it up first. And yeah, Avos confirming all these probabilities in chat for me, so thank you very much. And Caront finally going to go turn this adamant, I believe. So, Kenny, meanwhile, is finally heading into Scud. Yeah. Alright, yeah, 6% chance. Same difference. Point being, you need to roll a 20 in order to kill Chaos with Brack after you manage to strip him of his elemental defenses. So, that's fun. Yeah, so Caront, at least, going to be getting his Oxyale, going to be making the voyage over to sea, probably. So he'll probably also check Mermaids first, see that it's the floater, and he did get the... Okay. I was looking away. He did get the Oxyale from the Smith, right? He did have that conversation wherein he turned in the Adamant, right? Because if he didn't, that's bad. Because that means he probably didn't do it. So, you can make Chaos run away. There's actually... Like, the thing is you have to land Fear. And Fear is, not an easy spell to land. But that's not entirely true. In the Randomizer, there is a flag that randomizes morale. The reason that it normally isn't used is because morale for most of the, like, in-game bosses is already maxed out. So, there's a pretty good chance that anything that it can roll lower. Yes, you do. There was actually a challenge seed about a year or 2 years ago, where that was actually the win condition. Because the Chaos that got rolled was horrifying. It was nasty. It was unfair. But a level 50 character would just make him run away because his morale was too low. And that wins the game. The game ends on the conclusion of the Chaos fight, and it doesn't care if Chaos died or ran away, because in the game's opinion, both count. So, to answer the question, yes, you can make Chaos run away. By that same token, fearing the pirates, technically a valid strategy. You can probably punch them down faster, but nonetheless, a valid strategy. Kenny's still opening boxes. I don't know what he wants at this point. He's got 2 ribbons. He's got opal armor. He's got a Mazza. He's got an Excal. I have to wonder if he just doesn't feel comfortable without an Aegis or that 3rd ribbon. Something to protect him from potentially getting baned or something. Oh, yeah, no, that absolutely can happen. Especially if it's like a level 50 black belt. So, we're not seeing that in this season. We're really not seeing that much in the spring tournament. Oh, good. Caront does get his Mazza. So, that's good for him. But black belt... Black belt is a special case. So, unarmed black belt... An unarmored black belt instead uses a multiplier of their level to determine attack and defense, or absorb, respectively. It's essentially your level times 2 for a black belt's attack power, and your absorb times 1 for your absorb, if you are not wearing any equipment. So a level 50 black belt also has, like, I think a crit rate of 25 on top of that. Yeah. Long story short... Alright, and yeah, Avos pointing out in Chaos... That fear is non-elemental. So yeah. You have a very low chance of landing fear. But Thunderclaw chiming in to point out that if you do land that fear, you can make Chaos run away after a couple of hits of fear. Bottom line, you can't, like, in the randomizer with the right flags, fearing Chaos or making Chaos run away from your party is not a TAS-only strat. Oh, is Fear elemental? Okay, it's just that Fear's accuracy is too low, I see. Yeah, we're getting to the part where I'm starting to talk about things I've never looked into, so folks are having to correct me. Ah, but Kenny does find the white shirt, and that might be the piece he was looking for. The ability to just dump Invis 2s on the party. So, I'll be surprised if he keeps opening boxes now. Oh, Caront, no! 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 You don't need to check your check. Oh, Caront! Don't check key-locked Marsh Cave when you still have literally anything else to do! Even if Marsh Cave wasn't that bad, don't do it! Oh, I feel bad now. Because my seed drove him to do this. But yeah, Avos over there dropping some notes. If you really want to get deep into, like, the individual accuracies of spells and things of that sort, I again urge you, come join us on our Discord. You can get there through the Randomizer website. and other things. And yeah, we also have folks in the chat busting out the straight up, you know, hex memory information for where things come from. So, yeah, sorry, I needed to field a question real quick off camera. So, point being though, you should come join us because things get very silly in terms of understanding. But Pleb, you are forgetting that there's a third God index for RNG. Which is where the 3 in 256 come from. There's actually a fix in alpha to make it a 2 in 356. I believe Geezonator may have been the one to add that. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure someone in chat can say who actually decided to do that. But, yeah. So, Kenny's got an Aegis, he's got a flame armor, he's got a ribbon. He's got pretty much the best equipment you can strap to a ninja at this point. I cannot imagine at this point he wants anything else. Like, he's got enough armor to get the Temple of Fiends revisited, I feel like. Especially since he's basically been running 3 men through Sky. Or no, he hasn't. Oh, but Caront finds the 3rd ribbon in Keylog Marsh. I take back what I said. That's a good value find for him. So, that's potentially going to carry him through the rest of this game. And we've got a chicken. I forgot to call for the Bless RNGs, and apparently that was the solution. Kenny is going to take this fight, fasting up his ninja and his knight, and okay, he didn't even need to bother, because I think that... Or no, he did have to bother, but that war mech is about to die. Like, that damage output is... And that's going to be enough. That's some good levels right there. So, Kenny in a really good position after dealing with Tiamat to finish this seed out under the time limit. But yeah. Ugh, and Mitch Flower Power dropping 551 people on us. Holy cow! Thank you very much for the raid. I'm guessing that this is a warm-up for this Mario Bros. 3 stuff that's going on in a little while. But hopefully y'all sit back and enjoy the rest of Final Fantasy 1 Randomizer while you're here. Because, yeah, we have a seed. How can I put this in a way for folks who are unfamiliar with it? Basically, this seed has been punching the runners in the face by making them run all over the place. And then when they actually do, like, get somewhere they want to be, just conventionally punches them in the face. It's been rather rude, but we are getting toward the end of it, so, I'll try to see if I can summarize really fast what we have been dealing with. So anyway, the runners got off to an early start by being handed 2 items that made it very useful to go talk to Elven Royalty. Unfortunately, the Elven Royalty didn't give them anything except a boat, and told them good luck. So they wound up sailing across the entire continent looking for more things to do. They wound up going into a live volcano, which gave them an old woman's glasses, while one of the other runners decided to go into a swamp where they found the canal that allowed them to leave the inner sea. Unfortunately, the old woman's glasses led to a gemstone, which gave them a key that they needed in order to unlock a few other things, including numerous pieces of very valuable equipment. Eventually, they found their way into a cave where they found a very important rock. This very important rock, in turn, allowed them to get their hands on a breathing apparatus. This breathing apparatus allowed them to go into the dungeon you see on the right, the Sea Shrine. The Sea Shrine, in turn, allowed them to find a rock that let them get a ship into the air. The ship into the air allowed them to class change. Very important because they really need equipment in the seed, because unfortunately none of their characters are actually capable of casting the spells that will revive them if they happen to die. Long story short, they have gotten into a bit of a pickle and have just now started really being able to kill the Fiends of the Elements. KennyStarr, the runner on the left, is about to dive into the final dungeon, so you literally are coming at the tail end of this. I am unfortunately probably not going to be able to summarize all the really complex technical crap that's going on, but fortunately, there are a lot of Final Fantasy I Randomizer races happening, and you will almost certainly be able to figure out what's going on if you watch enough of them, which I would highly encourage, because they're all really entertaining. And we are now in Temple of Fiends Revisit, which is basically the endgame dungeon. There are 4 boss fights in this dungeon against rehashes of the 4 bosses that you had to clear earlier in the game. They are much stronger and usually have very nasty abilities. So we are going to see if Kenny can get through this before the race y'all are here to see. But we are at least going to be diving in to this. So, what are we dealing with? Kenny is basically going to be going through a set of floors early on. These floors have monsters that you generally saw in the last couple of dungeons of the game, and a couple of mid-game bosses. So, what we are going up against is him having to very quickly run through here. He does have some idea of how often he's going to be getting into fights, because the steps that you take determine when you're going to get into fights. And so, he has some idea of when he's going to be taking battles. This is basically the prologue to pain. Because what's going to happen here in a minute is he's going to be running into what we call a spike tile, a tile where you're forced to take a fight. We have no idea what's on this tile. Normally it's an enemy known as the Phantom that hits really hard. Today it is going to be a pack of sorcerers that he's just going to run from. He is going to play a lute that is going to make this evil tile go away. He's going to open a locked door. Let's see here. We are then going to see him turn and run through the floor. This will take him down to the backside of the floor he came in. He will then run down a staircase, and that will put him on what we lovingly call the Earth floor. The Earth floor is a rehash of the first boss in the normal game, the Fiend of Earth Lich. And so the Fiend of Earth Lich, in turn, is going to give us the business sometimes. He's probably going to die very easily. However, he can occasionally roll a nasty spell and cause you some trouble. I'll again remind you that that Kenny does not have any ability to revive his party members. Any death he takes in this dungeon from his party is permanent. So he's really hoping that everything bad is deep enough in the enemy's AI that he'll never see it. He'll just kill them and be done with it. So, in the meantime, Caront is opening every box on the right, because he is still looking for that floater that is on the next floor down, but he doesn't know that. So he's looking around for it because he's checked everywhere else it should be, and it isn't. So, on that note, we are at Lich 2. Lich 2 is about to get hit in the face by a couple of guys with really big swords, and actually has a lot of absorb and the nuclear ability. That's not good. That's going to hit really hard. That's 4 hits for 275, and 4 hits for 179, and Kenny has made it through Lich 1. So, we are moving on to the second floor. And what we're looking at here is the fire floor. This is actually in my floors in the game. You're not really seeing who didn't see in Volcano, which is a fairly early dungeon, which means that their base stats are generally not too bad. Obviously, if they happen to roll something bad, that's unpleasant. You don't want to deal with that. But in this context, this is kind of your breather floor. Now, the boss of the end, Carrie 2's first iteration we saw was rude. So there's a good chance that Carrie 2 is going to be bristling with rudeness as well. What we're going to see as soon as Kenny can manage to make it through this fight with the red Ds. And yeah, Gams LLP, this is kind of like Pokemon, except you get 4 Pokemon at once, and they get a lot more skills to play with. But other than that, it's basically the same thing. Also, you have to worry less about your party's weaknesses and more about your party just getting hit really, really hard. Either way, Caront is at least going to finish cleaning out mermaids, and then he's probably going to do the same thing Kenny did. He's going to go turn in that floater and go class change because, oh dear God, do we want to stop getting, does he want to stop suffering? Alright, so here's Carrie. Carrie, too, is what I consider to be the first fiend you actually have to, like, do any kind of buffing preparation for. Because she can hit hard, and she can hit dangerously. And she can have a lot of health to go around. In this case, however, I'll take 2 whacks of sword, and Kenny is through. So we are on to the water floor. Water floor is where things get dicey, for 2 reasons. First of all, there tend to be a lot of packs of a lot of enemies, those of you who are just now joining us. Final Fantasy I has a lot of things going for it, and one thing is fights tend to be very complicated for a JRPG, because you tend to deal with a lot of packs of large enemies who are doing a lot of damage very quickly, and also do a lot of slow things. We're seeing absolutely none of that. Kenny got a hero run and is about to confront Kraken 2. Kraken 2 is what most people consider to be the first really dangerous boss in this entire rundown. Because Kraken 2, by default, gets a lot of hits, a decent amount of HP, resists most elements, and, generally speaking, is just horrifying. As you can see, Kenny has moved his fighter down to his back position. In Final Fantasy I, whether or not the likelihood of an enemy hitting a character is based on their position in the party. That front character is likely to take the hit at 50%, second character has a 25% chance of getting hit, and the last 2 characters have 12.5% chance of getting hit. By putting that fighter in the back, it reduces the chance that Kraken is going to hit him for something like 13 hits for 811 damage. Holy crap, that black mage is dead. So, what Kenny is doing now is he is putting defense casts on that fighter. Defense casts a spell called Ruse. Ruse makes you less likely to take damage, increases your evasion tremendously. That fighter basically is trying to protect himself. As you can see, 2 casts of Ruse has made it so that Kraken only hit him once. Unfortunately, Kraken also hit him for 101 damage. That's fine, Kraken is dead. Unfortunately, so are 2 of Kenny's party members, who he cannot bring back to life. So he is going to have to finish off the 4th fiend, Tiamat 2, with a single, with a fighter and a ninja. He is hoping that ninja survives because that's extra punches against chaos, as well as someone who can put a white shirt on to get additional evasion stats. Anyway, we are now at Tiamat 2. Tiamat 2 is another fiend that has a lot of really good base stats that, when randomized, can scale very brutally, very quickly. We are first going to see Kenny do a little bit of inventory management. I'll assuming that white shirt is being moved onto the ninja in order to provide the ninja with a little bit better So what we're going to probably see out of Kenny on this first turn is he's going to cast the defense sword, cast the white shirt, get 3 stacks of evasion set up on that fighter, and at least 1 stack on the ninja, in case this Tiamat turns out to be swingy. If Tiamat instead comes out blasting magic every which way, this could turn very bad very fast. Just so it's clear, if Kenny does die on this dive, we are probably going to go ahead and kick this over to the SMB3 folks. They can go ahead and get themselves set up in time for the race. To address the question, chat, what is he trying to do? He only has 2 living party members, so what he is trying to do right now is make sure the best equipment is on the best person. Basically making sure he has as much absorb as he can get, as much elemental protection as he can get, because he basically needs both of these characters to live. That's the long and short of it. He never did pick up the power gauntlet, so what he has is what he gets. And unfortunately, while he is prepared for Kraken to come out swinging, Kraken got initiative. So we're going to see another round of this, and that Lit 2 is exactly what wants to see. All right, he is now completely safe on that fighter, and that ninja has a couple of good stacks of evasion. So he's just going to start swinging, and Tia goes down to 1 hit. That was a paper Tia 2. We are on our way to chaos. So here is the Fiend of Fiends Chaos. Normally he has 2,000 HP. He can have up to 4,300 today. He has 200 magic defense. You generally only want to hit him with your sword. We have 2 swords. We have 2 swords that crit a lot. We have no casts of fast, no casts of temper. This is 100%. Let's get our defenses up, and then let's start punching this guy in the face and see what happens. And so we've got defense and white shirt coming up. The ninja takes a hit, but the ninja is still standing. Defense comes up. Chaos is now not going to be able to hit that knight and may only be barely able to hit the ninja. He throws out a bane. It's ineffective. They're wearing ribbons. Chaos comes out with nothing because the ninja goes first. The knight is able to swing. 4 hits, 408. Newt comes out. The ninja is down. The knight cannot take another Newt. Newt, 5 hits, 108 or 101. Thunder comes out. Knight resists. Knight swings. 5 hits, 384. Rub comes out. Chaos is able to not do nothing. That is the ribbon doing its work. Knight hits for 126. Knight hits for 147. I'm getting way too fast for my tongue, but that's okay because it's 5 hits for 6 damage. Kenny has to finish this if we want to see the end of this match. Fire 3, absorbed. Sword comes out. 5 hits, 229, and Chaos is dead at 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 44 seconds. Get your GGs in chat. Caront, unfortunately, will be forfeiting, but that is okay. We'll try to get both of them in here to get their thoughts real quick, and then we will kick it over to Super Mario Bros. 3. So, in the meantime, while we're waiting to see if they can hop in, unless Rick is about to tell us we ain't going to do an interview, that's fine too. All right, we'll have 2 or 3 minutes. Let's see if we can get them in here. All right. So let's see if we can get them in here super quick. If not, then we'll kick everything over here in like a minute or 2. But if we don't get them over here, if this seemed exciting to you, if this seemed like your cup of tea just to watch, jump in the follow that Discord link. Jump in the Discord, give yourself the spectator role, and you'll find out when every race is happening here in Final Fantasy Randomizer. Otherwise, make sure to give these 2 gentlemen, because they are excellent. Make sure to give my tracker here, Kevin McLeod, a follow, because he did a lot of work tonight. And if you enjoyed the commentary, we have a lot of commentators in this community who do excellent work. And it looks like we're probably not going to have time to do an interview, which is a shame, but we'll probably have the 2 runners talking about their seed in the Discord. So if you're curious about their thoughts, you can join us there. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and kick things over. Speed Gaming, feel free to pass this off to the Super Mario Bros. 3 community. And everyone who is watching, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy keeping things going. And if you're watching the VOD, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank y'all, and we are out.